Nathan Hart sat quietly in his small rented room, the yellow light of an old desk lamp illuminating the faded pages of a worn-out textbook. The town was perpetually draped in a dreary mist, but the chill inside the room was even more oppressive. The creaking, ancient heater in the corner struggled to warm the space, but failed miserably. He paused, staring at the page filled with financial calculations. His bank account was nearly drained. Medical bills for his younger brother and mounting student loans pressed heavily on his shoulders. Despite working long hours at a local cafe, his earnings barely covered the bare essentials. Suddenly, his old phone buzzed. Startled, Nathan glanced at the screen. An unfamiliar number flashed. Hesitant, he picked up the call. Nathan Hart speaking, a woman's voice, low and commanding, responded. Nathan Hart, this is Vivian Laurent. I have a proposition for you, one that could change your life forever. Nathan frowned. The name Vivian Laurent rang no bells. In 23 years of life, he had never encountered anyone by that name. I'm sorry, who are you? And how did you get my number? He asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Though a mix of curiosity and unease crept in, Vivian cut him off briskly. That's not something you need to worry about. Meet me at Velvet Corner Cafe at p.m. tonight. I promise this meeting will be worth your time. Before Nathan could respond, the line went dead. He sat frozen, the phone still trembling faintly in his hand. Whoever she was, she knew him, not just his number, but perhaps his precarious circumstances as well. The afternoon dragged on, filled with restless thoughts. The strange phone call echoed endlessly in his mind, like a refrain he couldn't silence. By 5:45, Nathan donned his worn jacket and stepped outside. The drizzle persisted, coating the streets in a glistening sheen under dim streetlights. Velvet Corner was a small cafe on the corner, its warm golden glow through the windows beckoning passersby to step inside. Nathan pushed the door open. A soft chime rang out, but no one looked up. The cafe was nearly empty, save for a few scattered patrons engrossed in books or laptops. In the far corner, a woman sat upright, a teacup in her hand. Vivian Laurent. Nathan recognized her instantly. She exuded an undeniable presence, even though she was no longer young. Her silver hair was neatly pinned back, her delicate but cold features framed by a simple cream-colored dress that radiated understated elegance. Vivian raised her gaze as Nathan approached, her piercing blue eyes seeming to scrutinize his very soul. Nathan Hart, she gestured for him to sit, her voice calm and steady. Nathan hesitated, then pulled out the chair across from her. So, who are you? And why am I here? He asked, his tone laced with caution. Vivian didn't respond immediately. She took a sip of tea, placed the cup down, and locked eyes with him. I've been observing you for some time, Nathan. I know about your financial struggles, your student loans, your brother's medical bills, and the immense pressure your family is under. Nathan's brow furrowed. How could she possibly know all this? I don't understand. What do you want from me? Vivian tilted her head slightly, a faint enigmatic smile gracing her lips. A transaction. Nathan's frown deepened. What kind of transaction? Leaning slightly forward, her voice dropped but remained firm. I want you to marry me. Nathan's eyes widened in shock as he leaned back in his chair, his mind reeling. He let out a nervous laugh, his bewilderment evident. Marry you? This has to be some kind of joke. Vivian's expression didn't waver. No, this is no joke. This is a serious proposition. I will pay off all your debts, ensure your brother receives the best medical care, and provide financial security for your family. In exchange, you will become my husband. The words landed like a bombshell, exploding in Nathan's mind. He shook his head, struggling to comprehend the bizarre proposal. Why me? You could choose anyone. For the first time, Vivian let out a faint, sardonic chuckle. You're the perfect candidate. You're young, unattached, and most importantly, your situation makes you desperate enough to consider this. Nathan felt his face flush with anger. You think I'm so desperate that I'd agree to marry a stranger just for money? Vivian shrugged and phased. I don't need you to love me, Nathan. I only need a companion of legal name to strengthen my position and secure my assets. Don't think of this as love. Think of it as a contract. Nathan shot to his feet, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. I can't do this. You're insane. Vivian remained composed, sipping her tea before setting the cup down. Of course, you're free to decline. But remember, this opportunity won't last forever. You have until tomorrow to decide. After that, the offer disappears for good. Nathan stormed out of the cafe without another word. The rain had grown heavier, soaking his coat and hair as he trudged down the streets. The gray sky, the cold streets, and the dim yellow lights spilling from windows only amplified his isolation. A monumental decision weighed heavily on Nathan's shoulders, and he knew that no matter what he chose, his life would never be the same. That evening, Nathan lay on the stiff bed in his small rented room, staring at the cracked ceiling. The glow from the street lamp outside cast long, uneven shadows on the walls, but his mind found no solace. The conversation with Vivian Laurent played on a loop in his head, every word striking like a hammer blow. Marry me, the phrase lingered in his mind, tightening his chest. He tried to rationalize her motives, but it all seemed too bizarre, too unreal. His eyes drifted to the cluttered desk where his notebook lay open, pages filled with chaotic scribbles about his brother's medical bills, rent, and tuition fees. The final negative balance glared back at him like an unrelenting reminder of his dire situation. The next morning, Nathan walked into the tiny kitchen where his mother was making coffee. Her face was etched with fatigue, silver strands falling across her temples. She turned and smiled faintly when she saw him. Nathan, you're up early. Nathan sat down, his hands clasped together, his unease evident. Mom, if there was a way to fix everything, to get us out of this mess, but it's unconventional. Do you think I should do it? His mother set down the coffee pot, her eyes filled with concern. What is it, Nathan? Did something happen? Nathan took a deep breath and recounted the entire story. When he finished, the room fell silent. His mother bit her lip, her face a tapestry of emotions: shock, doubt, and above all, worry. Nathan, I know it sounds strange, but if she really can help us, maybe you should consider it. Nathan's eyes widened, disbelief etched across his face. Mom, are you saying I should marry a stranger just because she has money? That's like selling my soul. His mother took his hands, her eyes glistening with tears. Nathan, I don't want you to sacrifice your happiness, but I also can't bear to see this family breaking under the weight of everything. If this could save your brother, pay off the debts that are crushing you, then maybe it's worth thinking about. You need to think about the future, Nathan. Her words stabbed deep into his heart. He knew she wasn't wrong. His brother desperately needed help that he couldn't provide. His family was drowning in debt, and if he didn't act, he risked losing everything. By p.m. that evening, Nathan found himself back at Velvet Corner Cafe. Vivian was already seated at the same table, her poised demeanor unchanged, exuding that same cold confidence. As Nathan approached, she smiled faintly, as if she had anticipated his return. Nathan Hart, she gestured for him to sit. Nathan sat down, his expression serious, his gaze steady. I need to understand more. If I agree, what will this marriage look like? Vivian took a sip of tea, setting her cup down carefully. "This marriage will not be like a typical one. You'll live with me at the Laurent estate. You'll act as my husband and attend events with me, accompany me when necessary. In return, I'll ensure all your financial needs, and those of your family are fully met." Nathan frowned. No love. No real attachment, just a transaction. Vivian nodded, unapologetic. "Exactly. This isn't about emotions, Nathan. It's about power and stability. I don't need love. I need a legal partner to protect my assets and reputation." Nathan felt a lump in his throat. "Why do you need this?" "Why me?" Vivian's piercing gaze locked onto his, a glint of cold calculation in her eyes. "Because you're perfect for the role. Young, unattached, and most importantly desperate enough to say yes." Her words felt like a slap, but Nathan couldn't deny the truth in them. "Is there anything else I need to know?" he asked, his voice quieter now, tinged with resignation. Vivian tilted her head slightly, a faint smile playing on her lips. "Just one thing. Once you agree, there's no turning back." Nathan took a deep breath, his chest tightening under the weight of his conflicted emotions. He felt as though he were standing on the edge of a precipice, a single decision away from irrevocably altering his life. "I need more time to think." He stood abruptly, unable to bear the pressure of her gaze any longer. Vivian didn't stop him. She simply inclined her head, her eyes following him as he walked out of the cafe. "Of course, Nathan. But don't take too long. This offer won't remain on the table forever." Nathan returned to the cramped apartment he shared with his mother after meeting with Vivian. The small space, already suffocating, now felt even more oppressive. The steady rhythm of rain tapping against the window mixed with the ticking of an old wall clock, creating a heavy atmosphere. He sat at the kitchen table, his head in his hands. Piles of bills lay scattered before him: hospital fees, his brother's medication costs, and his own student loans. Each piece of paper was a relentless reminder of the crushing weight he carried. His mother walked in, holding a cup of tea. She paused when she saw him hunched over, his face etched with worry. "Nathan, what's wrong? Is something bothering you?" she asked. Nathan looked up, his eyes red and tired. He didn't want to speak, but the silence only tightened the noose around him. I don't know what to do anymore, Mom," he said softly. She placed the tea on the table and sat beside him, her face lined with the marks of age and years of hardship. "Tell me, Nathan. What's troubling you so much?" Nathan drew a deep breath and began recounting everything from Vivian's unexpected call to their meeting at the cafe, and finally her strange proposal. When he finished, the room fell into a heavy silence. His mother clutched her cup tightly, her expression a mix of shock and contemplation. "She wants you to marry her? Just for money?" Nathan nodded, his face a canvas of confusion and frustration. "Yes. And she made it very clear this isn't about love or family. It's just a business deal. I can't accept this, Mom. It's wrong. It's like selling my soul." She looked at him for a long moment, her eyes filled with concern and sadness. "Nathan, I understand how you feel. But you know how bad things have gotten for us. The hospital bills are more than we can afford. Without help, I don't know what will happen to your brother." "But Mom," Nathan said, his voice breaking, "I don't want to give up my life and become her puppet just because she has money. This isn't the life I want." She took his hands in hers, her voice trembling. I know how hard this is for you. But sometimes we have to make sacrifices to protect the ones we love. If she's truly willing to help, maybe you should think about it. You wouldn't just be saving your brother. You'd be giving yourself a chance to escape this burden." Nathan pulled his hands away and stood, walking to the window. He stared out at the rain, which fell steadily on the empty street below. You want me to give up my freedom? To marry someone I don't love, just for money? Her voice grew softer, but remained firm. I don't want you to give up anything. I want you to survive. And sometimes surviving means making hard choices. That night, Nathan sat alone in his room, staring at the phone on his desk. Vivian Lawrence's number was still saved. A symbol of the turmoil consuming him, he reached for his notebook, flipping through pages of financial calculations. Every figure told the same story. Without help, he couldn't save his family. But the cost of that help might be too high. Nathan leaned back, a single tear sliding down his cheek. He wasn't someone who gave in easily, but this time the odds felt insurmountable. Taking a deep breath, he picked up the phone and pressed the call button. The next morning, Nathan walked into Velvet Corner Cafe for the third time. This time, there was no hesitation in his steps as he entered. Vivian was already seated at their usual table, her air of composed authority unshaken. She looked up as Nathan approached, a faint smile curling her lips as if she had always known he would return. Nathan, she said, inclining her head slightly. I assume you've made your decision. Nathan sat across from her, his body tense, his voice heavy with resignation. I'll do it. I'll marry you. Vivian straightened, a glimmer of satisfaction flashing in her cold, piercing eyes. Good. You've made the right choice. Nathan clenched his fists under the table, struggling to contain the emotions swirling within him. But I have conditions. My family must be taken care of, and everything must be transparent. Vivian nodded, her expression unwavering. You'll have everything you need, Nathan. But remember, once we enter this agreement, there's no turning back. Nathan inhaled deeply, trying to steady himself. I understand. Vivian studied him for a moment, then extended her hand. Welcome to the deal, Nathan Hart. Nathan shook her hand, the chill of her touch sending a shiver down his spine. He couldn't tell if he had just saved his family or lost himself forever. On a frigid winter morning, Nathan stood before the grand doors of the county courthouse, clutching the edge of his coat tightly. His breath misted in the icy air, each exhale dissipating into the overcast gloom. The sky hung heavy and gray, mirroring the storm of emotions within him. Right on time, a sleek black limousine pulled up to the curb. Vivian stepped out, wrapped in a long silver gray coat, her features sharp and flawless beneath a light touch of makeup. She didn't glance around. Her eyes fixed firmly on Nathan, Vivian calm but firm. Let's go. Nathan nodded, his steps heavy as though weighed down by invisible chains. He followed her into the courthouse, where everything had already been arranged. Inside the courtroom, a judge sat behind a large wooden desk, glasses perched on his nose as he reviewed the marriage documents. The room was sparsely populated, a lawyer representing Vivian and a notary. No flowers, no guests, just the sterile atmosphere of a transaction. Nathan stood beside Vivian, the faint scent of her perfume, cold and distant, wafting toward him. The silence was so profound that Nathan could hear his own breath. The judge glanced up at them. Judge Nathan Hart, do you take Vivian Lawrence as your lawful wife, promising to support and stand by her in all circumstances, for better or worse? Nathan drew in a deep breath, his eyes flickering toward Vivian. She stood tall, her gaze impassive, revealing nothing, Nathan's voice trembling. I do. The judge turned to Vivian. Judge, Vivian Lawrence, do you take Nathan Hart as your lawful husband, committing to share responsibilities and remain faithful to him? Vivian responded without hesitation. Vivian, I do. The sound of the pen scratching across the marriage certificate was loud in the quiet room. The judge's voice broke the stillness. Judge, by the authority vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. Congratulations. As they stepped out of the courthouse, Nathan felt a strange chill run down his spine. The winter wind bit at his face, but the coldest thing he felt was the emptiness gnawing at his heart. Vivian turned to him, extending her hand. Vivian softly, "Welcome to your new life, Nathan Hart." Nathan shook her hand, her grip as icy as her demeanor. Another limousine waited for them at the curb. Vivian gestured for Nathan to follow. Inside, the plush leather seats and warm interior contrasted sharply with the biting cold outside. Vivian sat poised, her hands resting on her lap, her face unreadable. Nathan gazing out the window, speaking softly. "You didn't invite anyone? No family, no friends?" Vivian with a faint smile. "I don't need them. You're all I require for this marriage." A pang of sadness struck Nathan. His wedding had no family, no friends, no celebration. He couldn't help but wonder if Vivian was genuinely content with such an isolated existence, or if she, too, was a prisoner of her own walls. The limousine turned onto a long, winding driveway, flanked by barren trees. A pair of wrought iron gates creaked open, revealing the Laurent estate. The mansion loomed ahead, majestic yet foreboding. Towering columns framed the entrance, and intricately carved granite walls hinted at wealth, but the darkened windows exuded an air of secrecy. Nathan stepped out of the car, gripping the handle of his suitcase tightly. An elderly butler stood waiting at the entrance, bowing slightly as they approached. "Butler, welcome, Mrs. Laurent and Mr. Hart. Your room has been prepared." Vivian nodded, turning to Nathan. "Vivian, you'll be staying in the East Wing. The estate is large, but I'm sure you'll adjust quickly." "Dinner is at 7 p.m. Nathan frowned, his confusion evident. "Nathan, we're not sharing a room?" Vivian's lips curved into a faint, detached smile. "Vivian, Nathan, I told you. This is a transaction. Your privacy will be respected, as long as you fulfill your role." She turned and walked away, leaving Nathan standing in the grand foyer, feeling like an outsider in a world that wasn't his. The butler led Nathan through endless hallways, each lined with imposing portraits of stern-faced ancestors whose painted eyes seemed to follow him. Nathan's room was lavishly furnished, with a king-sized bed, an ornate wardrobe, and a large window overlooking a meticulously manicured garden. Yet, like the rest of the mansion, it lacked warmth. He placed his suitcase on the floor and sank onto the bed, staring at the opulent yet lifeless surroundings. The gilded cage he now inhabited was as beautiful as it was isolating. That evening, Nathan sat at one end of an expansive dining table in the grand dining hall. Vivian sat at the opposite end, impeccably dressed in a sleek black gown. Course after course was served by the estate's chef, but the chill in the air made the food taste hollow. Vivian broke the silence. "Vivian, I trust you've settled into your room." Nathan hesitant. "It's large. I think I might get lost." Vivian sipped her wine, her expression unchanging. "Vivian, you'll adjust soon enough. This estate has been my home for many years, and now it's yours as well." Nathan set his spoon down, the knot in his throat making it hard to swallow. "Nathan, Vivian, have you ever felt lonely in this place?" For a moment, a flicker of something pain perhaps crossed her eyes, but it was gone as quickly as it appeared. She replied with her usual cold detachment. "Vivian, loneliness is something I've grown accustomed to." "You will too, Nathan." Her words landed like a sentence, a reminder of the life Nathan had signed up for. As the flickering candles cast long shadows on the walls, he realized he was now part of a world as cold and enigmatic as the woman sitting across from him. Little did he know, the secrets hidden within the walls of the Laurent estate would unravel his life in ways he couldn't yet imagine. Nathan's first morning at the Laurent estate was unlike any he'd experienced before. Pale sunlight filtered through floor-to-ceiling glass windows, casting intricate patterns onto the ornate walls. The air was heavy with an eerie stillness, broken only by the distant chirping of birds in the vast gardens outside. He opened his eyes, overwhelmed by the unfamiliarity of his surroundings. Sitting up in the oversized bed draped with luxurious silk sheets, Nathan felt dwarfed by the room's opulence. Though the furnishings were immaculate, there was a coldness that seeped into his bones. Stepping into the hallway, he found Harris, the elderly butler, waiting for him. Tall and gaunt, Harris exuded a quiet authority. His sharp eyes, though not unkind, missed nothing. "Harris, good morning, Mr. Hart. Breakfast is ready, but Mrs. Laurent has requested I give you a tour of the estate first." Nathan nodding, slightly awkward. "Thank you, Mr. Harris. I think I'll need it. This place feels like a labyrinth." Harris offered a faint smile, more polite than warm. The tour began with long, echoing hallways adorned with oil paintings. Most depicted stern-faced individuals in period attire, their eyes seeming to follow Nathan's every move. "Harris, the Laurent family has resided here for 4 generations. This is not just a home, it's a legacy." Nathan studied the portraits. In the dim light, the faces appeared almost lifelike, their gazes heavy with unspoken stories. When they reached the library, Nathan's jaw dropped. Thousands of books lined towering wooden shelves, with a spiral staircase leading to a second level. In the center stood a massive oak desk flanked by a leather armchair. "Nathan, this is incredible. Does anyone actually use all these books?" Harris chuckling softly. "Mrs. Lawrence spends much of her time here. She considers it her sanctuary." Nathan's attention was drawn to a large wooden door at the far end of the library. Its brass handle gleamed, though the wood looked aged and slightly weathered. Nathan gesturing. "What about that door? Where does it lead?" Harris hesitated, his expression carefully neutral. "Harris, it's a storage room. It hasn't been used in years." Nathan frowned, sensing an undercurrent of evasion in Harris's tone. But he chose not to press the matter. After the tour, Nathan joined Vivian for breakfast in the grand dining hall. She was already seated, sipping coffee, her composure regal as ever. "Vivian, have you familiarized yourself with the estate?" "Nathan, it's massive. I'll need weeks to memorize everything." Vivian smiled faintly, her expression as enigmatic as ever. "Vivian, you'll adjust soon enough. But remember, Nathan, this estate is not for idle wandering. Some areas are best left untouched." Nathan paused, her words sparking a flicker of defiance in him. "Nathan, like the locked door in the library?" For a moment, Vivian's expression stiffened. She placed her cup down carefully, her lips curving into a controlled smile. "Vivian, I trust I don't need to remind you, Nathan. Some doors are better left closed." Her words, though spoken lightly, carried an undeniable weight. Nathan nodded, but his curiosity only deepened. Later that afternoon, Nathan roamed the estate alone, trying to make sense of his new home. A few staff members cleaned the halls, nodding respectfully, but avoiding his gaze as though fearful of being noticed. He stopped a young maid, hoping to make conversation. "Nathan, hi there. Have you worked here long?" The maid flinched, her wide eyes darting around before she answered. "Maid, no, sir. Only a few months." Nathan smiled, attempting to put her at ease. "Nathan, how do you find it here? Is it a good place to work?" She glanced over her shoulder, then lowered her voice. "Maid, you should be careful, sir. There are things best not spoken of." Before Nathan could ask more, she bowed quickly and hurried away. That night, Nathan lay in bed, unable to sleep. The estate's silence was oppressive, its stillness suffocating. Seeking relief, he got up and wandered the dimly lit hallways, passing the library. He stopped before the locked door. It seemed to emanate an almost magnetic pull. Nathan reached for the brass handle and twisted it, but it wouldn't budge. Frustrated, he let go, staring at the door as though willing it to reveal its secrets. A faint sound caught his attention, soft, deliberate footsteps echoing down the hall. His heart pounded as he turned, but the corridor was empty. The footsteps stopped as abruptly as they had started. Nathan stood frozen, the hair on the back of his neck standing on end. Though the hallway was empty, he couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching him from the shadows. It was Nathan's second evening at the Laurent estate. Dinner was served promptly in the grand dining hall. The crystal chandelier above cast a warm glow, reflecting off the polished silverware meticulously arranged on the long table. Vivian sat at one end, her slender figure wrapped in a dark sapphire silk dress, exuding an air of regality. Nathan occupied the far end, feeling more like a guest at a formal ceremony than a participant in a domestic meal. The vastness of the room amplified its chill. The clinking of silverware against porcelain was the only sound, and the oppressive silence gnawed at Nathan's patience. He set his utensils down, inhaled deeply, and broke the quiet. "Nathan, Vivian, I think we need to talk." Vivian didn't look up immediately. She took a deliberate sip of her wine, set the glass down gracefully, and finally met his gaze. Vivian calmly, "Oh, and what makes you feel the need to discuss matters now?" Nathan narrowed his eyes, sensing a trace of mockery in her tone. "Nathan, this marriage. I need to understand my role better. And I want to know why you chose me when there are clearly others who'd be more suitable." Vivian leaned back slightly, her hand resting on the edge of the table. Her sharp eyes locked onto his, as if weighing whether he deserved a real answer. Vivian steadily, "Nathan, as I said from the beginning, this is a transaction. I need someone to solidify my position, and you, given your circumstances and temperament, are the perfect choice." Nathan frowned, dissatisfied with her evasive response. "Nathan, my circumstances. You mean because I'm poor, desperate, and willing to trade everything for money?" Vivian didn't deny it. Her lips curled into a faint smile, one devoid of warmth. "Vivian, precisely. I needed someone unencumbered, intelligent enough not to cause trouble, but vulnerable enough to comply." Her bluntness hit Nathan like a slap. His fists clenched beneath the table as he fought to keep his temper in check. Nathan voiced low, "Do you think you can control me forever?" Vivian picked up her knife, slicing her meat with meticulous precision, her movements calm and deliberate. "Vivian, Nathan, I don't need to control you. You'll come to understand that everything is already in place. If you play your part well, you'll get what you were promised." Nathan could no longer suppress his anger. He leaned forward, his eyes blazing. "Nathan, you don't know anything about me. I'm not some toy you can use and discard when it's convenient." Vivian set down her utensils and raised her head. For the first time, her expression hardened, her icy gaze cutting into him like a blade. "Vivian, you're not a toy, Nathan. You're a tool. And tools are valuable only when used correctly. You agreed to this arrangement, so don't forget your role." The room grew stiflingly quiet, her words hanging in the air like a noose. Nathan rose abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the wooden floor. "Nathan, you think you can define my role. You don't know me, and you have no right to dictate my life." Vivian tilted her head slightly, her demeanor softening just enough to resemble a predator watching its prey struggle. Vivian softly, but with menace, "You can believe what you wish, Nathan. But remember, not everyone gets the chance to save their family. You had a choice, and you chose me. So, Don't complain about what you've received. Her words slammed shut every door of escape. Nathan felt trapped, as though he had wandered deeper into a labyrinth with no exit. Nathan's voice trembling. Do you feel any joy at all, living like this? A life of manipulation and control? Vivian remained silent for a moment, her expression unreadable. Finally, she stood, her blue eyes glinting with a mix of intrigue and cold calculation. Vivian, joy doesn't exist in this world, Nathan. Only power does. And you do well to remember that. Without another word, she walked out of the room, leaving Nathan alone at the long dining table. A wave of emptiness and helplessness washed over him. Back in his room, Nathan paced restlessly, his mind racing. He eventually sat by the window, gazing out at the pitch-black garden below. The pale moonlight filtered through the trees, casting shifting shadows across the ground. He felt as though the estate was a prison without walls, its confines defined by Vivian's iron will. Nathan whispered to himself, his voice resolute despite the despair creeping into his heart. Nathan, if she thinks I'll live like this forever, she's wrong. I'll find a way out, no matter the cost. His words lingered in the silence, a promise made to himself against the oppressive weight of the Laurent estate. After his tense confrontation with Vivian, Nathan resolved to uncover the secrets of the Laurent estate himself. Late that night, dim lights from wall sconces flickered across the long hallways. The ancient portraits along the walls seemed to watch his every move, their painted eyes unnervingly lifelike in the faint glow. Nathan walked slowly toward the library, one of the rooms Harris had shown him earlier. It was an expansive space filled with towering bookshelves that exuded the musty scent of aged wood and paper. Moonlight streamed through a massive window, illuminating the center of the room with a cold, pale glow. Running his fingers along the spines of the books, Nathan was struck by the unsettling silence enveloping the room. Near Vivian's large desk in a shadowed corner, he noticed a book with a spine that glimmered faintly in the moonlight, Nathan murmuring, "This has to mean something." He pulled the book from the shelf, and a soft rustle followed as something fell from between its pages. Crouching down, Nathan's breath caught when he saw a small, ornate key lying on the floor, glinting under the faint light. The key was made of brass and intricately decorated, a miniature work of art. He turned it over in his hand, its weight and craftsmanship setting it apart from anything else he'd seen in the estate. Nathan to himself, this doesn't belong to just any door. It must open something important. His thoughts immediately returned to the locked door in the library one Harris had been evasive about when explaining its purpose. Looking around to ensure he was alone, Nathan slipped the key into his pocket and quietly exited the room. As Nathan walked back toward his room, the faint sound of footsteps on the wooden floor stopped him in his tracks. He turned sharply, scanning the hallway behind him, but it was empty. His heart pounded in his chest as he whispered under his breath, "Nathan, someone's here. Or am I imagining things?" Quickening his pace, he returned to his room, closed the door, and leaned against it, trying to calm his nerves. Taking the key out of his pocket, he stared at it again. The curiosity and unease it inspired churned within him, Nathan muttering, "There's something hidden in this house. This key might be the way to find it." He slipped the key under his pillow and lay down, though sleep was elusive. His mind replayed the events of the day, Vivian's warnings, the maid's cryptic remarks, and now this discovery. At dawn, sunlight filtered through the window, casting warm tones across the Persian rug. Nathan sat up, gripping the key tightly in his hand. The mix of excitement and trepidation spurred him on. After a terse breakfast with Vivian, who exchanged only a few formal pleasantries, Nathan returned to the library when he was sure no one was watching. His pulse quickened as he stood before the large wooden door at the room's far end. The brass handle and intricate carvings on the door bore a striking resemblance to the designs on the key. Glancing around to confirm he was alone, Nathan slid the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. Taking a deep breath, he turned the key. A soft click echoed in the stillness, and the door creaked open, revealing a dim, dusty room. Nathan stepped inside, the faint light from the hallway barely illuminating the space. Dust motes danced in the air as he took in his surroundings. Glass cabinets lined the walls, filled with old photographs, papers, and personal artifacts. On a wooden table in the center of the room sat an oil lamp. Nathan lit it, casting a warm, flickering glow over the objects. His eyes were drawn to a silver-framed photograph, a younger Vivian standing beside a middle-aged man. The man's confident expression clashed with the tension in his eyes. Nathan whispering, "Is this her husband?" His gaze shifted to the documents scattered across the table. As he skimmed them, his stomach dropped. His father's name appeared in several of the business records. The papers detailed a partnership between his father and Vivian's late husband, Harold Laurent, a partnership that seemed to have ended disastrously. A handwritten letter caught his attention. The sharp, deliberate script was unmistakably Vivian's. The words burned with resentment. "You destroyed everything we had. My family lost everything because of your insatiable greed. You deceived Harold and led us into ruin. I swear you'll pay for this, if not you, then your heirs." Nathan's hands trembled as he finished reading. The letter wasn't just a revelation of Vivian's grudge against his father. It was evidence that his marriage to her had been orchestrated as part of a calculated plan for revenge. Nathan murmuring, voice shaking, She planned all of this." A sudden noise from the hallway snapped him out of his thoughts. The faint creak of footsteps grew louder. Panicked, Nathan extinguished the lamp, shoved the documents back into place, and stepped out of the room, locking it behind him. He ducked behind a nearby bookshelf, heart racing, as Vivian appeared in the doorway. She scanned the library, her sharp eyes sweeping over the room as though searching for something or someone. Nathan held his breath, clutching the key tightly in his pocket, and waited for her to leave. Nathan sat in his bedroom, the faint glow of a desk lamp casting long shadows across the walls. The small brass key lay on the table, a cold reminder of the secrets he had unearthed. The words from Vivian's letter to his father echoed in his mind, each line a dagger to his pride. He tried to sleep, but the faint sounds of the night kept him wide awake, the creak of wood, the whistle of wind through the window, and strange noises he couldn't place. Rising from the bed, Nathan gazed out the large window. The garden below was shrouded in darkness, the trees swaying gently under the pale moonlight. Nathan whispering to himself, "I can't just sit here doing nothing." Taking the key from the table, he slipped it into his coat pocket, opened the door quietly, and stepped into the dimly lit hallway. The silence was oppressive, broken only by the soft hum of the estate's stillness. He exhaled slowly and made his way back to the library. The heavy door to the library groaned softly as Nathan pushed it open. The room was as silent as before, but the air seemed heavier, as if it held its breath in anticipation. He crossed the space quickly, heading for the locked door in the far corner. Nathan reached for the brass handle. Hesitating for a moment, Nathan to himself, "I need to know. If I don't, I'll never understand why she brought me into this." With a decisive twist, he inserted the key and turned it. The lock clicked, shattering the silence. The door creaked open, revealing the same small, dusty room as before. This time, Nathan took his time examining it, his eyes scanning every detail. A silver-framed photograph caught his attention. The photo depicted a younger Vivian standing beside a man with an air of authority. His confident expression was undercut by a trace of unease in his eyes. Beside the photograph sat a worn leather journal, Hesitating briefly, Nathan opened the journal, its brittle pages cracking slightly as he turned them. Vivian's handwriting filled the pages, her words sharp and deliberate. September 12th, Harold said he trusted his partner too much. But I saw the truth. Nathan Hart's father is a cunning fraud. He destroyed Harold's career, plunging our family into ruin. Double quotes. As Nathan skimmed further, the entries detailed Vivian's meticulous plan for revenge. She had tracked his family for years, orchestrating events to ensure Nathan's involvement in her life. Closing the journal, Nathan's hands trembled. Everything he thought he understood about his marriage was a lie. Nathan whispering angrily, "She didn't marry me for a deal." "This is a trap." Before he could process further, a cold voice cut through the stillness. "Vivian, how fascinating. I didn't expect you to find this so quickly." Nathan spun around to see Vivian standing in the doorway, her expression calm but her eyes sharp as blades. He clutched the journal tightly, his heart racing as he faced her. "Nathan, all of this. It was your plan from the beginning, wasn't it? You didn't choose me because I was suitable. You chose me to exact revenge on my family." Vivian stepped into the room slowly, her gaze never leaving his. Vivian coolly, "I told you from the start, Nathan. This is a transaction. But if you thought there weren't personal reasons involved, then you were naive." Nathan felt a rush of anger flood his veins. "Nathan, you're trying to punish my father by using me as a pawn? My father's dead, Vivian. He can't pay for what he did, and I had nothing to do with it." Vivian stopped, her piercing blue eyes cold and unwavering. "Vivian, you're right, Nathan. Your father is gone, but he left his legacy in you. You represent everything I lost, and I will not let that go unanswered." Nathan threw the journal onto the table, his anger boiling over. "Nathan, do you really think revenge will fix anything? Your husband is gone, your family is gone, and you have all the money and power in the world. Yet you're still consumed by the past." For the first time, Vivian's composure faltered. Her shoulders stiffened as her lips tightened into a thin line. "Vivian," her voice lowering, "you don't know what it's like to lose everything because of someone you trusted. To watch everything you built crumble because of their betrayal." Nathan stepped closer, though he kept a safe distance. "Nathan, you're right, I don't know that pain. But I know that revenge doesn't end well. It won't bring back your husband, and it won't fill whatever void you're trying to mask. It will only make you as cruel and selfish as my father was." The room fell silent, the tension thick and suffocating. They locked eyes, neither willing to back down. Vivian finally broke the silence, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "Vivian, be careful with your words, Nathan. I've dealt with far more formidable opponents than you. You're just a pawn in this game. Don't forget that." She turned on her heel and strode toward the door. Before stepping out, she glanced over her shoulder, her eyes cold and calculating. "Vivian, and remember, Nathan, crossing boundaries will come with consequences. Severe ones. Double quotes. As she disappeared into the hallway, Nathan stood frozen, the weight of her words pressing down on him. He felt as though he had stepped into a storm he wasn't prepared to face. Alone in the dim room, Nathan clenched his fists, determination brewing inside him. Nathan to himself, "I'm not her pawn. I'll find a way to end this. On my terms." Nathan sat alone in the library, the heavy silence pressing down on him like a physical weight. The journal lay open on the table, a stark reminder of Vivian's years of calculated resentment. Every line he had read painted a darker picture of his father's actions and his own unwitting role in her vengeance. He stared at the journal, his thoughts tangled and chaotic. Part of him wanted to read more, to fully understand the depths of Vivian's hatred, but another part of him recoiled. Each page felt like an indictment, not just of his father but of himself. Nathan thinking, why would she let me find this? Either she doesn't care, or she's so confident I can't change anything. He reached for the journal again, but stopped himself, pulling his hand back as if it burned. His mind needed clarity, a way to make sense of everything. Nathan decided to seek out Harris. The old butler seemed to know more about the Laurent estate and Vivian's past than anyone else. If anyone could answer his questions, it was him. Nathan found Harris in the kitchen overseeing the preparation of lunch. The butler moved with a quiet authority, giving instructions to the staff as they worked. When he noticed Nathan enter, Harris paused, his expression tinged with concern. Harris, Mr. Hart, is there something you need? Nathan, I need to speak with you. Privately. Harris hesitated, his eyes flickering with unease, but he nodded and motioned for Nathan to follow. They stepped into a small pantry behind the kitchen, its shelves lined with jars of spices and bottles of wine. Harris, what is it you wish to know, sir? Nathan locked eyes with Harris, his voice low but firm. Nathan, I know about the feud between Vivian and my family. What did my father do to make her hate us this much? Harris sighed deeply, his shoulders slumping slightly under the weight of the question. Harris, Mr. Hart, I believe you've stumbled upon things Mrs. Laurent has long kept hidden. But if you truly wish to know, I'll tell you. Harris poured himself a small glass of wine from a nearby bottle, taking a slow sip as if to brace himself for the memories. Harris, your father, Mr. Jonathan Hart, was once a business partner of Mr. Harold Laurent, Mrs. Laurent's late husband. Together, they invested in a large real estate project. But things didn't go as planned. Harris met Nathan's gaze, his eyes filled with a mix of pity and regret. Harris, your father, manipulated the numbers, siphoning off the majority of the project's profits. He left Harold with massive debts. The Laurent family lost everything. Not long after discovering the truth, Harold suffered a fatal heart attack. Nathan staggered back as if struck, the air leaving his lungs. Nathan whispering, my father. Did that? Harris nodded solemnly. Harris, Mrs. Laurent lost her husband, her wealth, her status, everything. But she didn't give up. She rebuilt her life from the ground up, reclaiming what she had lost. And now she seeks justice that she believes only her family can provide. Nathan sank into a small wooden chair, his head bowed low. Harris's words echoed in his mind, forcing him to confront an agonizing truth. His family's legacy wasn't one of honor, but of greed and betrayal. Nathan, so that's why she married me. To complete her revenge. Harris hesitated as if weighing his next words carefully. Harris, I can't say for certain, sir. Mrs. Laurent rarely reveals her true intentions. But I will tell you this. She does nothing without reason. If you wish to survive in her world, you must never forget that. Nathan returned to his room, a heavy weight settling on his chest. The revelations about his father's actions and Vivian's motives left him feeling trapped in a web of lies and vengeance. He stood by the window, staring out at the estate's sprawling gardens bathed in soft sunlight. The scene was deceptively peaceful, masking the turmoil that simmered within the Laurent estate. Nathan whispering to himself, what am I supposed to do now? How do I get out of this without causing more harm? The question lingered in the still air, unanswered as Nathan gazed into the distance, the future shrouded in uncertainty. Nathan sat in his room, the dim light from the desk lamp falling on the open journal he had uncovered. Anger churned within him, tangled with pain and helplessness. This marriage was no longer a strange transaction. It was a carefully orchestrated trap, a revenge plot meticulously crafted by Vivian over years. He stared at the old photograph of Vivian and Harold Laurent, his eyes fixed on Harold's bright, confident smile. Shame burned in his chest for what his father had done. But he couldn't allow Vivian to control his life any longer. Nathan grabbed his phone and dialed Clara, his trusted law school friend. The call rang several times before she picked up, her familiar, energetic voice filling the line. "Clara, Nathan? You're calling this late? What's going on?" "Nathan, Clara, I need your help." Clara, concerned. "You sound tense. Are you okay?" "Nathan, I'm fine, but I'm in a very complicated situation. I can't explain everything over the phone, but I need you to investigate something for me." Clara paused, then spoke cautiously. "Clara, all right? What do you need me to do?" "Nathan, look into Vivian Lawrence's financial dealings. I suspect this isn't just personal, there's something bigger, something involving money. Can you check for anything unusual?" Clara exhaled audibly, her voice tinged with skepticism. "Clara, Nathan, what have you gotten yourself into?" "I'll look into it, but you have to promise to tell me everything when we meet." "Nathan, I promise." "Thank you, Clara. I'll send you the details." After the call, Nathan began combing through the library and unused rooms in the estate. He knew Vivian was shrewd and careful, but his determination to uncover the truth outweighed his fear. Returning to the hidden room, Nathan sifted through the documents on the desk with renewed focus. Amidst a stack of papers, he found financial reports tied to Vivian's investment companies. The figures showed massive transactions, many of which seemed suspiciously routed through offshore accounts. He picked up a pale yellow envelope and pulled out a handwritten letter. It was signed by someone who appeared to be Vivian's financial partner. The letter's contents made Nathan's brow furrow. "Vivian, I've received your request and have arranged the transfers as instructed. But be careful if anything is discovered. We'll both face serious consequences." Nathan closed his eyes, piecing together the implications. Nathan to himself, "She's not just after revenge. She's using this marriage to mask illegal financial dealings." Snapping photos of the documents, Nathan texted Clara immediately. Nathan text, "Clara, I found this. It might tie into something bigger with Vivian. Look into it carefully." The next day, Nathan was walking through one of the mansion's long hallways when Harris appeared, stopping him with a somber expression. "Harris, Mr. Hart, may I speak with you privately?" Nathan nodded and followed the butler into a small room off the dining area. Harris shut the door and lowered his voice. "Harris, I know you've uncovered some things within the estate, and I think you need advice." "Nathan, what do you know, Harris? How long have you been here, and why are you helping me?" Harris sighed, his aging shoulders slumping under the weight of his words. "Harris, I've served the Laurent family for over 30 years. I know Mrs. Laurent better than anyone, but I also know the toll hatred has taken on her. If you're not careful, she'll destroy you, just as she's done to others before." Nathan narrowed his eyes, trying to understand Harris's meaning. "Nathan, what do you mean? What has she done to others?" Harris shook his head. "Harris, I can't reveal everything, but know this: she's always one step ahead. If you want to survive her game, you'll need to be smarter and more cautious than she is." Back in his room, Nathan began formulating a plan. He knew he needed enough evidence not only to expose Vivian's motives, but also to protect himself from her inevitable retaliation. He wrote a short list. 1. Investigate Vivian's finances. Work with Clara to trace her offshore dealings and uncover illegal activities. 2. Dig deeper into Vivian's past. Find patterns of similar behavior or past manipulations. 3. Find a way out of the marriage. Consult a lawyer about annulment or legal grounds for escape, such as coercion or fraud. That evening, Vivian unexpectedly knocked on Nathan's door. She entered, her calm demeanor betraying an edge of sharp awareness. "Vivian." "Nathan, I trust you haven't forgotten the terms of our agreement." Nathan standing his ground. "I haven't. But I also haven't forgotten that this agreement doesn't make me your slave." Vivian's lips curved into a faint menacing smile. "Vivian, you might think you're clever, Nathan. But remember, every move you make, I've already anticipated. Don't let your curiosity lead you somewhere you can't return from." Nathan stood silent, his gaze steady and unyielding. Vivian left, her presence like a storm cloud dissipating, but leaving the air charged, Nathan whispering to himself, "We'll see who's really ahead in this game." The morning sunlight filtered through the dense trees of the Laurent estate garden as Nathan received Clara's text. Her message was succinct but alarming. "I've found something big. We need to talk." Nathan immediately called her, the anticipation building in his chest. After a few rings, Clara answered, her voice steady but laced with tension. "Clara, Nathan, I don't know what you've gotten into, but this is serious. The things I found aren't just illegal, they're dangerous." Nathan gravely, "What did you find? What has she done?" Clara sighed, pausing briefly to organize her thoughts. "Clara, Vivian Laurent has been using a network of shell companies to funnel money overseas. She disguises the transactions as charitable projects, but the funds are being redirected into offshore accounts under aliases. What's worse, she's tied to some highly dubious organizations. If this comes to light, she could face charges of money laundering and large-scale fraud." Nathan's heart raced as he tightened his grip on the phone. "Nathan, are you sure? Is there enough to expose her?" "Clara, if you can get a few more pieces of evidence to back this up." "Absolutely. But Nathan, you need to be extremely careful. If Vivian suspects you're investigating her, she won't hesitate to act." Nathan's jaw tightened as determination flared in his eyes. "Nathan, I understand." "Thanks, Clara. I'll handle the rest." Nathan spent the rest of the day preparing. He knew his next move would be critical and that any misstep could cost him dearly. That evening, when the house was shrouded in silence, he made his way back to the secret room in the library, unlocking the door. He slipped inside, this time armed with his phone to document every incriminating piece of evidence he could find. Digging deeper, he uncovered a thick file buried in the bottom of a drawer. It contained detailed financial records of Vivian's dealings, names of accounts, shell companies, and false charities. Each page confirmed Clara's findings. He meticulously photographed each document, his hands shaking with a mix of adrenaline and fear. As he flipped through the final pages, a faint sound reached his ears, a soft creak from the hallway. Nathan froze, then slowly turned toward the door. Standing in the doorway was Vivian. She was dressed in a sleek black silk coat, her hair neatly pinned, and her piercing blue eyes fixed coldly on him. Vivian calmly, her voice cutting through the tension. "I warned you, Nathan. Some doors are better left unopened." Nathan's pulse quickened, but he steadied himself, refusing to look away. "Nathan, you're right. But I can't sit back while my life is reduced to being a pawn in your twisted revenge plan." Vivian stepped into the room, her heels clicking rhythmically against the wooden floor as she approached. "Vivian, you've put yourself in a precarious position, Nathan. Did you think I wouldn't notice every move you've made?" Nathan raised his phone, his eyes blazing with defiance. "Nathan, you might know my moves, but now I have something you can't hide. These documents are enough to expose you for everything you've done." Vivian stopped in her tracks, a faint smirk playing on her lips. "Vivian, you think you can beat me? Nathan, you're naive. Others have tried, and all of them have failed." Nathan held his ground, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the phone. Nathan, maybe they failed, but I won't. I'll find a way to end this and make you face justice for everything you've done. For the first time, Vivian's composure faltered, a flicker of anger flashing in her eyes. Vivian, be careful, Nathan. You're not just threatening me, you're putting yourself in a position you can't escape from. I warned you. She turned to leave, but paused at the doorway, her voice colder than ever as she looked back. Vivian, if you think you can outmaneuver me, think again. I've prepared for this moment my entire life. Nathan stood motionless in the room for a moment, his legs trembling beneath him. He quickly gathered the remaining documents, locked the door behind him, and returned to his room. Locking the door, he sat on the edge of his bed, scrolling through the photos on his phone. The evidence was damning: names, dates, transactions, all neatly documented. Nathan to himself, his voice a whisper. I have everything I need. Once this comes to light, she won't be able to control me anymore. But deep down, Nathan knew this was just the beginning. Vivian wouldn't back down without a fight, and the battle ahead would push him to his limits. Nathan sat on the edge of his bed, the dim glow from his desk lamp illuminating his determined face. On his phone screen were the photos of Vivian's incriminating financial documents, irrefutable evidence of her illegal activities. He knew one wrong move could cost him everything. As Vivian was a master of turning the tide in her favor, taking a deep breath, he dialed Clara. Clara answering, Nathan? Are you okay? I've been looking deeper into everything. It's worse than we thought. Nathan, I'm fine, but we need to act now. Can you help me get these documents to a trusted lawyer or journalist? We need to make sure that if something happens to me, the truth comes out. Clara pausing briefly, I can do that. But Nathan, you need to be careful. Vivian isn't someone who leaves loose ends. If she finds out, she'll do whatever it takes to stop you. Nathan, I know. But I can't let her keep controlling everything. After hanging up, Nathan sent all the photos to Clara, adding a message. Nathan text, if you don't hear from me, you know what to do. That evening, Nathan decided to confront Vivian directly. He entered the dining room, where she was already seated. The table was lavishly set, the silverware gleaming under the chandelier's warm light. But the air was colder than ever. Vivian glanced at him as he sat, her expression calm but her eyes calculating. Vivian, you seem tense, Nathan. Is something troubling you? Nathan met her gaze, his own brimming with defiance. Nathan, you know exactly why. I've uncovered everything you've been hiding. Vivian, all your illegal transactions, all the lies. I've sent the evidence out. You can't control me anymore. Vivian paused, setting down her fork and knife with deliberate care. A faint icy smile spread across her lips, though her sharp eyes betrayed a simmering anger. Vivian, I warned you, Nathan. Some games aren't meant for amateurs. Do you really think you can beat me? Nathan leaned forward, his voice steady but resolute. Nathan, I don't need to beat you, Vivian. I just need to end your game. The fake marriage, the dirty deals, they'll all come to light. You can control me, but you can't control the truth. Vivian's smile faded slightly. She reached into her coat pocket and pulled out her phone, placing it on the table. She unlocked the screen and turned it toward Nathan. On the screen was a photo of his mother and younger brother at the hospital. The angle and their frightened expressions sent a chill down his spine. Vivian, have you thought about them, Nathan? If you keep pushing, can you guarantee their safety? Nathan clenched his fists, his voice dropping to a growl. Nathan, are you threatening me? Vivian calmly, no, Nathan. I'm reminding you that the people you care about are always the easiest targets. Nathan inhaled deeply, trying to suppress the rage building inside him. He knew she was trying to shake him, but he refused to back down. Nathan, you can threaten me all you want. But if you touch them, I'll destroy everything including you. Vivian's smirk returned, though it lacked the confidence it once held. Vivian, you're starting to intrigue me, Nathan. I wonder how far you're willing to go. She rose from her chair, picking up her wine glass, and walked slowly to the large window overlooking the garden. Her voice softened, laced with menace. Vivian, you know, Nathan, I thought you'd be an easy pawn to maneuver. But it seems you have more potential than I gave you credit for. Even so, remember, once you step into my game, there's no turning back. Nathan stood as well, his resolve unshaken. Nathan, turn back or not, I won't let you control me any longer. This marriage, your schemes, they'll all end soon. The room fell into an icy silence as Nathan walked out, leaving Vivian standing alone by the window. Her eyes darkened as she stared into the garden, her calm demeanor giving way to a storm brewing within. The battle between Nathan and Vivian had escalated beyond a transactional relationship. It was now a war not just of power, but of survival and redemption. Nathan stormed out of the dining room, his heart filled with anger and anxiety. Vivian clearly wasn't someone who could be easily intimidated, and her willingness to target his family showed she would stop at nothing to maintain control. He realized this battle had escalated far beyond a simple transaction. It had become a fight for survival. In her office, Vivian sat at her desk, the glow from a desk lamp reflecting off the wine glass in her hand. Her sharp eyes scanned the laptop screen, which displayed a list of emails and sensitive documents. She picked up her phone and called one of her most trusted associates. Vivian, I need all documents related to the financial transactions encrypted and secured immediately. Leave no trace that can be tracked back to me. Is that clear? Associate. Understood, Mrs. Laurent. But it seems some of the older files may have been accessed. I'll handle it right away. Vivian firmly. Don't just handle it. I want to know exactly who Nathan has been in contact with and where those documents have gone. Any slip-up is unacceptable. Ending the call, Vivian's expression hardened, her eyes glinting with icy determination. Vivian to herself. Nathan, you don't realize you're playing with fire. I won't let you destroy everything I've built. Meanwhile, Nathan knew he needed more help than Clara could provide. He called Peter, an old friend from law school who now worked at a prominent legal firm. Peter cheerfully, Nathan, it's been a while. What's going on? Calling me at this hour? Nathan, Peter, I need your help. This is serious. Peter, sounds intense. Go ahead, I'm listening. Nathan explained everything from his bizarre marriage to Vivian, her revenge plot, to the incriminating financial evidence he had uncovered. Peter was silent for a long moment before speaking, his tone filled with concern. Peter, Nathan, what have you gotten yourself into? Someone like Vivian Laurent isn't an easy opponent. But if you're determined, I'll help. We need to ensure those documents are strong enough to convict her, and we'll also need to protect you and your family. Nathan relieved. Thank you, Peter. I don't know what I'd do without you. Later that night, Nathan received a call from his mother. Her voice trembled with worry as she described strangers showing up at the hospital, asking strange questions about his younger brother's condition. Mother, Nathan, do you know what's going on? These people aren't doctors, but they keep insisting on seeing your brother. Nathan angrily. Mom, don't let anyone near him. I'll handle this. Nathan immediately realized it was Vivian's counterstrike, a clear message that she wasn't afraid to escalate the fight and target those he loved. Nathan called Harris, the one person in the Laurent estate he felt he could trust. Nathan, Harris, I need your help. Vivian is going after my family. Is there any way to stop her? Harris sighed heavily, his voice filled with unease. Harris, Mr. Hart, Mrs. Laurent never allows anyone to stand in her way. But if you want to defeat her, you'll need to strike at her greatest vulnerability, her reputation. She can handle legal trouble, but she cannot afford public disgrace. Nathan considered Harris's advice carefully. Despite her ruthlessness and power, Vivian deeply valued how others perceived her, Nathan muttering, her reputation. "Thank you, Harris. I think I know what to do." Nathan sat down at his desk and wrote out a detailed plan. 1. Expose the truth. Using the evidence verified by Clara and Peter, Nathan would send it to a prominent investigative journalist who could bring the case to light without fear of intimidation. 2. Protect his family. He would contact a private security agency to ensure his mother and brother's safety. 3. Direct confrontation. Nathan decided to face Vivian one last time, holding nothing back, to force her to stop her schemes once and for all. As he finalized his strategy, Nathan felt a mix of determination and apprehension. The battle ahead would be grueling, but he knew he couldn't afford to lose. It was no longer just about reclaiming his freedom, it was about protecting his family and ending Vivian's reign of manipulation for good. End of part 1. Will Nathan be able to follow through with the plans he's set out? Stay tuned for part 2 of this compelling story. Thank you all for taking the time to follow this journey. We hope the story has brought you moments of emotion, reflection, and inspiration to always stand by what is right, even in the face of adversity. If this story has touched your heart, please like and subscribe to our channel to support us. See you in the next chapter.